is up, guys? Crunch Games here, and today I am bringing you my team builder and post commentary for the battle of Week 1 versus the Witt Diancies, who are coached by Divinity. Now, looking at my opponent's team, his team is actually really scary because he has some great offensive threats, but also has some pretty big defensive walls. Looking at his team, he has Mega Alakazam, Infernape, Ferrothorn, Slowking, Snorlax, Vikavolt, Nidoking, Hydreigon, Comfey, and Ice Cube. So, looking at his team, initially I was thinking, okay, if I can get set up with Scolipede, this thing is gonna just take lives against his team, because he has, with Scolipede's coverage with Mega Horn, Earthquake, and Poison Jab, it was basically able to outspeed and knock out like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of his mons just at +1. So that's what explains the moveset. So Protect allowed me to automatically ensure that I get a +1 speed boost. Mega Horn was for the mons like Mega Alakazam, Hydreigon, and to kind of chip down Slowking, because Slowking was never OHKO'd by a single Mega Horn. Then we have Earthquake for the Infernape, just to deal damage to Ferrothorn, and then obviously Poison Jab for Comfey. So, looking at his EVs now, the 224 speed EVs paired with the Jolly Nature allowed me to outspeed a Scarfed Infernape at +1, which means that as soon as I outsped that thing, it was basically game over. Max attack was obviously just to deal out the most damage, and then the rest I just put into defense to see if I could live any hits. I probably should have just put it into HP, but it didn't really matter at that point because I just had 32 EVs left over to do whatever I wanted, so I just decided to put them in defense instead. Moving on to Nia, our female Gardevoir this week. I needed a Mon that could switch into and take hits from Mons like Mega Alakazam, Hydreigon, and Vikavolt, because nothing on my team really takes a hit well at all on the physical side and defensive side, barring Gardevoir and maybe Starmie. So that being said, I decided to bring an Assault Vested Gardevoir this week to take those hits from Mega Alakazam. So obviously, looking at its EVs, it has obviously it's 252 EVs in special defense, 252 EVs in special attack, and then 4 EVs in the health points rate category, so that not only can I take a lot of hits, but I can also deal out a lot of damage. So looking at some of the calcs, this thing is 3-hit KO'd by Shadow Ball from a Mega Alakazam, and I always 2-hit KO it in return with a Shadow Ball. Looking at Nidoking as well, even if it's paired with a Life Orb and Sheer Force ability, it still is only 2-hit KO'd by Sludge Wave, and I automatically knock it out with the Side Shock, no matter what EV spreads it runs. And then looking at Vikavolt, the other threats on his team, I'm literally only 4-hit KO'd by Vikavolt. Even if it runs Bug Buzz or Thunderbolt, even if it's Choice Specs, maybe 3-hit KO'd, but otherwise, this thing, it's not doing any damage to Gardevoir whatsoever. And then Mystical Fire, obviously 2-hit KOs. So, this thing was played a key part in this battle, being able to switch in and then switch out. Moving on to Shoyo, the Lycanroc Dust. This week I decided to bring a Choice Bandit set because I needed a Pokemon that could clean up late game. Right? And then with the Solrock giving me priority, that was pretty much ensured, so I decided to go with a Choice Bandit set because that just dealt out the most amount of damage for, I guess, the most effective way possible. So speed EVs, looking at it, was 176 speed and then a Jolly Natured. This was to outspeed a max speed Timid Nature Comfey. Now obviously thinking back on it, that was kind of stupid because Comfey does get the ability Triage, which gives it a +3 boost in priority to any self-healing moves, whether that be damaging or not. So if Comfey were to come, it could have brought like a Giga Drain set or whatnot, and it wouldn't have mattered. But I still thought it would be nice because even if it somehow, for some reason, it even comes in the first place, I can outspeed it if he doesn't run a Giga Drain set, something like that, or I can just, because otherwise I didn't really have anything else to speed creep, so Comfey just was the best decision for me. Now, because it's choice banded and it's max attack, a CC, or otherwise known as close combat, had a 25% chance to OHKO a max defense Ferrothorn. So that means it's like even the tiniest bit of chip meant I OHKO'd this thing. That's how vital this thing played. That's how much damage was vital to this game, because if as soon as Ferrothorn is gone, basically Scolpede runs through his team. So that's why I brought this thing. Psychic Fangs was obviously for the Infernape, Accelerock was for priority, and then Stone Edge was for Vicable. But mainly this thing, it came for this close combat on the Ferrothorn. That was the one calc that I needed to get done, and it, as you'll see in the battle, it did get it done. Now moving on to probably one of the most useless Pokemon, which I determined after the game, was Mega Manectric. So the reason I really brought this was mainly only for the Slowking, because I needed something that could not only give me momentum but take that thing out, and Mega Manectric was the only thing that could really deal out damage to it. Even if it ran an Assault Vest set, this thing still 2-hit KO'd the mom, so it was like I kinda had to bring it only for the defensive wall, otherwise I really would have opted out of bringing it. To be fair, like I brought Snarl for the Mega Alakazam, but I mean even then it's like I don't outspeed it, and I'm pretty much get one shot if this thing is taking any chip from Stealth Rocks or Spikes or whatnot. So, for the speed EVs and the special defense EVs, to be completely fair, I don't remember why I put them that way, because even with those speed EVs, I don't outspeed a max speed Jolly Natured or Timid Natured Infernape, so I can't really explain that much. But the 252 Modest Nature was, I mean, that's self-explanatory, it's just to deal with the most amount of damage. Now this week we brought an interesting set on the Starmie, running Light Clay with Toxic, Light Screen, Scald, and Flip Turn. It was definitely a weird set, to say the least. The Toxic was for residual damage, mainly on the Slowking, to wear that thing down. Light Screen was, I brought that thinking that if I was able to set up a Light Screen and get the Scolipede in, then I'm taking a hit from the Mega Alakazam, so even if I don't have a +1 speed boost up, I can always just hit it without having to waste a turn to protect, and so I can just go in and just start hitting things. So that's mainly why I brought Light Screen, just for the Mega Alakazam, but it was also helpful for Mons from Hydreigon or Nidoking, obviously. And then Scald was just for the damage, just to get the chip, and then Flip Turn was for the momentum. Now thinking back on it, I probably didn't need Flip Turn. I could have probably just brought Rapid Spin instead, but at the moment I thought that getting the momentum was more important than bringing Rapid Spin, because looking at my team, I didn't think I'd be that weak to Stealth Rocks, but that came back to bite me in the butt big time during the game, as you guys will see. But looking at its EVs, the 136 speed EVs allow me to outspeed a Infernape max speed. The bulk was to obviously lift hits from the Hydreigon and the Alakazam, and then I just threw the rest of it in defense. But in terms of the special defense and defense EVs, like I said before, with the Manectric, I can't remember for sure what moves I was trying to live, but I put it there, and they did allow me to live hits from the 2 of those mons, so I guess it was beneficial in the end. moving on to the 6th and final Pokemon that I brought this week. I needed something that could get up Stealth Rocks because that allowed me to deal some residual damage, so that Scolipede basically was insured to knock out things even when they came in off the switch. So obviously, like I said, I brought Stealth Rocks on the Bisharp. I also brought Knockoff because it was my only knockoff user. Iron Head for coverage, and then Sucker Punch for in case of the Alakazam. The set is pretty self-explanatory. Black glasses to boost the power of the Knockoff and Sucker Punch. Max attack was to deal with the most damage. I was debating whether to bring max defense or max HP, but bringing max defense didn't really do much for me at all because I didn't live any hits from Infernape or Ferrothorn or anything like that. But I didn't know if I wanted to put in special defense either because I wasn't really taking hits on the special defensive side either. So I decided to put it just into HP. Hindsight, I should have put it into special defense most likely because defensively I don't really know what I was living. But that's about it for Bisharp as well. So this is the team I brought for week 1 against Divinity. Let's move on to the battle. Welcome back, guys. We're gonna go over the battle now. So let's get right into it, shall we? So starting off, before we got into the battle, I was thinking, okay, I can either go Starmie or I go Bisharp here to predict either the Nidoking coming in to set up Stealth Rocks, or worst case scenario, the Ferrothorn comes in to set up spikes or something. But Bisharp coming in to set up Stealth Rocks wasn't necessarily as important to me, I felt, as getting in Starmie, because if I got the call right and Nidoking comes in, Starmie can deal out a lot of damage, or I can switch out for the flip turn to get momentum. So I thought that was the best play, and I was able to predict the Nidoking coming in, and that was a nice start to the battle. Moving on, I decided to go for a flip turn, as you can see, predicting the switch. Iron Barb's damage did hurt, but that was, it was inconsequential at the moment to me. So we switch out back into Manectric to say, okay, the Ferrothorn can switch out here, but if we go for an overheat, we do a lot of damage to anything that comes in. So I think, okay, fine, let's just see how much chip I'm doing. So I do a lot of damage to the Nidoking on the switch, and now that thing is down to 35, so its uses are very minuscule compared to before, so that's really nice. So now here, I really don't have an option, but I have to switch out and go into something else because I can't really risk losing Mega Manectric. So I decide to go into the Starmie again, and unfortunately he does get to set up the Stealth Rocks, predicting the switch, which is good for him, and because I don't have Rapid Spin or any other form of removal, that does hurt me in the end. Now here, turn 4, I just think, okay, let me just go for the chips, see what happens, and hope for a burn. That was probably not the best situation to be in. That put me in a bad situation, keeping Starmie in on Ferrothorn. I should have gone for the flip turn there, and then most likely gone into the Lycanroc to do a lot of damage to it, or just even knock it out. But I do stay in, and that turns into a problem. So turn 5, I'm thinking, okay, I have to switch out here, and so I go Bisharp, because in my head I'm thinking, okay, I need to get rid of the leftovers on the Ferrothorn, otherwise it's going to be a big problem. And he sets up a spike, which is, like I said, good for him because I have no removal, which is turns into a huge issue later on in the game. So here I just go for the knockoff, get rid of the leftovers on the Ferrothorn, and I take Iron Thorn's damage, or Iron Barb's damage, and I just completely blank, right? I forgot that Ferrothorn got Body Press, I forgot that move existed, so I end up sacking the Bisharp for no reason, basically. It was a bad play on my part,
And now here I'm like, okay, what do I do now? I'm kind of like I lost one of my best mons to deal with Alakazam. So I'm thinking, okay, if I get in Scolpede here, and according to the calc, on a max defense, max HP Ferrothorn, if I land one Mega Horn and I land one Earthquake, I get that should knock out the Ferrothorn, and I would be at +2 or +3 speed. So here I just go straight into the Scolpede, and right now I'm thinking, okay, this should be what I go for, but as you can see, I do end up missing the first Mega Horn. So now I'm like, oh gosh, what do I do now? I just missed a big attack. So I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do here? So I'm thinking, okay, whatever he does, I can go for the Protect and see what happens. And let's get to it. Yeah, he goes for the Gyro Ball. So I go for Protect here to scout whatever he goes for. He ends up going for the Leech Seed. Now here I'm thinking once again, he can go for the Gyro Ball and knock me out, or go for the Body Press and knock me out. And I'm like, okay, it's not even worth me keeping this thing alive. I just say, screw it. Let's go for the Mega Horn, because the chip is going to be really nice. Now here, I miss it again, which is really, it's like a yikes. He ends up going for Leech Seed instead. Now it's like, now it's like, this thing is, there's no more use in keeping this even alive anymore. There goes my one chance of sweeping with Scolpede on the first game. So, turn 10, I should have just gone for an Earthquake again, but I miss it for the third time. So, that's nice. He gets up a Spikes, and Scolpede goes down to Leech Seed. So now he has 2 layers of Spikes up and Stealth Rocks, and I have no damage on the first one. And it's like, oh my gosh, that was just a waste of so many turns, and I have no means of removal, so I'm in a really bad position now. And not to spoil it, but that basically ends up sealing the game off, right? So, but here, I decide to go into Lycanroc, because at this range, even a max HP, max defense Ferrothorn does not live a close combat from Lycanroc. So I just say, okay, let's just go for the close combat, see what happens. It's like nothing takes it for free, except maybe Slowking, but that's about it. So I just go for it, and for some reason he doesn't switch out, so Ferrothorn goes down, which is nice. I do take the Iron Barb's damage, and it's like, I mean, I took down the Ferrothorn, but it's like, oh my gosh, what happens? So he goes into the Slowking here, and now I'm in a position where it's like, okay, I have to switch out, expecting a Scald, because I can't risk Lycanroc going down, because that can be my answer to the Hydreigon if it's not Scarfed, or even if it is Scarfed, hopefully I live a hit, or the Ice Cube, to at least get its Ice Body, which I completely forgot about, and then post-match he told me about it. I'm like, oh, so even if the Scolpede had lived, it wouldn't have mattered as much, but that's why I needed to keep Lycanroc alive at that point in time, so I couldn't risk it, so I end up switching out into Starmie to take whatever water type attack that Slowking goes for, and in return he ends up going for the Teleport, which is a good play on his part. He gets to switch out into Hydreigon. And so here I'm thinking, okay, I can either switch out, or I can stay in and scout for the Scarf, right? Either way, I have to scout for the Scarf, and this was my way of scouting for the Scarf. So I end up, what happens is, he lands the Dark Pulse, and I go down, so I lose Starmie. The play there definitely was just to go into Gardevoir, and then see if he switches out or not. And that's a completely misplay on my part, right? If I just switched into the Gardevoir and then taken the Dark Pulse and then gone for a Shadow Ball or Side Shock in return, I would have been in a so much better position. But I do end up sacking the Starmie, which definitely not how I wanted that to go. So now I decide to go into Gardevoir turn late, when I should have just gone into it in the first place. So here he has to switch out, because now I know that he does have the Choice Scarf, so I just go for a Moonblast for some chip, and we get some nice chip on the Slowking, dealing 36%. So here I'm thinking, okay, he can't really do much damage to me at all, so I just go for the Shadow Ball to see what he does. He stays in, takes it. I get the Spadef drop, which is nice, doesn't matter as much, but he just ends up teleporting out and goes into Nidoking. Now here it's like I kind of lose no matter what happens, because he just goes into Mega Alakazam and cleans up. But here I'm thinking I can't switch out, because Nidoking 2-hit KOs everything with the spikes and everything. So he just ends up going for the Sludge Wave, and then I go for the Psyshock and knock it out in return, which is like, okay, I get rid of the Nidoking, it's nice. Differential's down to 4 instead of 3, or instead of 5, which is like, meh, but whatever. Now here, I'm like, okay, I'm thinking in my head, in the calcs, I die to a Dark Pulse anyway, or a U-turn, so I'm like, and if I switch out and switch back in, it dies to Hazard, so I kind of have to let Gardevoir go down. And at this point, it's like the game has been sealed off. There is no way I can come back. He goes to the Alakazam, and here my best play is to go into the Mega Magnetric and go for a Snarl, hopefully living a attack. But with all the chip from the Stealth Rocks and Spikes, it's like there's no way I'm living a Psychic on either Mon. So here he just goes for Psychic. Down goes Mega Magnetric. And then in comes Lycanroc, and that dies to a Psychic as well. So, not a very good start to the season. We lose 4-0, and we start the season 0-1. After this game, I was super upset with not only losing, but 2, missing 3 Mega Horns on the Ferrothorn in a row, especially. So it was really frustrating to lose in that way specifically. Looking back on it, I should have gone into the into the Lycanroc after the second or the third, or after the second or first Mega Horn miss. And then also the Starmie set, that was a bad brain on my part. I should have just gone for Rapid Spin over Light Screen, because in the end it didn't really matter that much. And getting rid of the Spikes and Stealth Rocks was much more important, because that did a lot of residual damage, which was a big part of why I lost as well. I learned that Mega Magnetric was pretty bad, all things considered. That like it just had almost no role in this game at all, because it's so single set oriented. It was prepped around so easily that it was just like, it's not worth it. Bisharp didn't do much that game, because one, I don't know, my head wasn't in the game, or whatever happened, that thing went down. So that was a big part of why I lost, because Alakazam basically just wrecked shop. I mean, it does get Focus Blast, but it was game over as soon as that happened. I did learn that Gardevoir and Lycanroc were good brings, so that the prep on those two was nice, because they did end up getting the only 2 kills. And if Gardevoir had been at a higher health, it would have put in the work I needed against Alakazam, and then an Accelerock from the Lycanroc would have taken it out. But unfortunately, the Hazards once again posed a big problem. And then post game, me and Divinity talked, and Ice-Q did have the Ice Body, so Scolpy would have been stopped even if I had killed the Ferrothorn. But it was upset. Like, it was frustrating that was the way that it had to go. So overall, interesting week 1, right? Didn't play my best. The sets that I brought weren't necessarily the best, and overall it was just a pretty mediocre game 1. We will bounce back next week. Hopefully, I'm going up against Josh Alls, so that should be fun. That being said, I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you liked it, please be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. And that being said, I hope to see you next time, guys. Peace.